Right, I'm back again today with another Exodus video. This time I've got a new deck profile. I've got my StunCrux stun deck. So we'll have a quick run through the deck and then I'll explain why the cards are there and what the purpose are. So, firstly, we've got 2 copies of StunCrux, Root of the World. Then we've got 2 copies of Shardwood Amalgamation. Two copies of Forerunner of Eclipses. 1 copy of Tanglewood Snag. 1 copy of Future Phenomenon. 1 copy of Sierras. And then that's our creature lineup. Onto symmetries. Run 2 copies of Chains. 2 copies of Crystal Cove. 2 copies of Treeforge Boardroom. 2 copies of Glisten Undergrowth. 2 copies of Glimpse of the Sanctuary, and lastly 2 copies of Breaking Helmet. So it's a 21 card deck and I'll run through the purpose of the deck now. So essentially the deck is just a 2 card combo which requires summoning Shardwood Amalgamation and keeping StunCrux Root of the World in the hand. So the main purpose is you summon Shardwood Amalgamation on your field while you've got StunCrux Root of the World in your hand. So let's say your opponent's got this as their field. So with Shardwood Amalgamation, it says when this creature attacks, is attacked or revealed, you may reveal 1 card in your hand, then you may target 1 frozen card in play. Its frozen condition becomes permanent. So you enter the attack phase and you attack with Shardwood Amalgamation. So you declare attack on Forerunner, for example, and then you can reveal a card in your hand. So you reveal your StunCrux, and StunCrux says when this creature is summoned or revealed, unfreeze or permanently freeze 1 card in play. So you could pick any of your opponent's creatures to freeze. So let's, for example, say we permanently freeze Forerunner. Then the playback rule happens, and because the state of the board changed, you can call off the attack, follow through with the attack, or retarget. So what you do is you call off the attack, and then Shardwood's free to attack again. So then this time we would attack Tanglewood Snag, and then Shard would activate again. So you'd reveal StunCrux again and permanently freeze Tanglewood. Call off the attack again, attack with Shardwood, reveal StunCrux again, and freeze Sierras. And you essentially can freeze every creature and every energy on your opponent's turn just by attacking with Shardwood, revealing StunCrux and calling off the attack. And then every other card in the deck is there to fuel this combo. So we've got our Shardwoods, and we've got our StunCruxes, and that's the main combo, and then everything else fuels that. So first off, we run the 1 copy of Sierras, because if all your opponent's creatures are frozen, all your Shard folk can attack directly. Both Shardwood and StunCrux are Shard folk, so they can attack directly. We then run double Forerunner because it can pretty much negate anything, but we run it primarily to negate creature abilities as we've got no way to stop them. And it also replaces itself by letting you draw a card, and also being part Shard folk, it can also attack directly from field if all your opponent's creatures are frozen. Then we run 1 copy of Tanglewood Snag, because once per turn you can pay 1 life point and reveal a card in your hand. So ideally what you do is you keep the Alexdoesathing in your hand when you've got Tanglewood Snag on the field, and during your turn it acts as a Crystal Cove. Because your opponent can play any symmetry they want, you can respond with Tanglewood Snag's ability, reveal Alexdoesathing, and permanently freeze the symmetry they try to play. You can only do it during your turn and only once per turn, but it's very handy to have stay there. And then our last creature is our Future Phenomenon. When this creature is revealed or enters play, you freeze like your opponent's graveyard, meaning no cards in the graveyard can leave play. So if they're at the point of a recycle, they just can't recycle or draw that turn, except their energy. But what we play it for is, when this creature attacks, reveal one card from your hand or main deck. So we play it as like a third copy of Shardwood. Because Shardwood is when it attacks it reveals, and this is also when it attacks it reveals. The only downside to Future Phenomenon is Shardwood also has when it's attacked. So you, even when your opponent attempts to attack you, or attempts to attack your Shardwood, you can just reveal Alexdoesathing to freeze the attacking creature. Essentially meaning they can't attack you unless they've got a way to destroy Shardwood first. Future Phenomenon doesn't have that, but it does act as a third Shardwood during your turn, which is why we just play the one copy. And having the freeze lock can come in handy, but I never try to use it. Then we've got our 2 copies of Chains, which is just to slow down your opponent and stop them from attacking you while you're trying to get to your combo pieces. It's not too hard. We run quite a lot of draw. We run the Forerunner is what slows down and lets us draw, and we do run 2 Alexdoesathing and 2 Shardwood, but it's there just if we need it. Then we've got the 2 Crystal Cove, which is it's mostly to play against stuff like Vortex in Unsummon, or Tethered to Eventide and Chrono. Pretty much it's there to stop anything that can destroy our Shardwood or discard our Alexdoesathing. And the benefit of Crystal Cove is whatever you cove, if Shardwood is attacked or revealed, you can make that condition permanent. So it's just handy to have. Then we have our Treeforge Boardroom, which, as long as you've got a Alexdoesathing in hand, essentially functions as a permanent Crystal Cove. Because it's pay 1 life point, each player on your team may reveal a card in their hand or the top and bottom card of the main deck. I don't usually use the main deck part. It's usually to reveal Alexdoesathing in hand. So if they play Vortex, you respond with Treeforge Boardroom. You reveal Alexdoesathing, you permanently freeze Vortex, and then as a bonus you get to draw an energy for the turn. So it's just acting as another Crystal Cove. Then we play Glisten Undergrowth. Reveal the top or bottom card of your deck. If it's a symmetry, we can send it to the grave to destroy an energy. We never use that. We usually use it to reveal and then add the card to our hand. Again, I have to use it because if we get lucky and reveal Future Phenomenon, Shardwood or Alexdoesathing, it just furthers our plays and disrupts our opponent even more. But it's mainly there just for a draw card. It can potentially combo quite well with Treeforge Boardroom. It can give you that top or bottom deck knowledge, and if you don't want to add it to your hand, you can use Treeforge Boardroom because you know exactly what you're going to be revealing. Then we run our 2 Glimpse of the Sanctuary. Each player adds an energy to a blank pile and you draw a card. It's there just to make our Shardwood even stronger and then draw. We play our Breaking Helver. It's just a draw 1, it just replaces itself, but we run this over any other draw card because it can also shut down Drifters for a turn, which is very handy. And then we've got one last card. So this one's optional, but it can be run if you want, and it's the Sleeping Sanctum. So at the start of a player's turn, that player may reveal the top card of their main deck or their opponent's main deck. If you use it, it's very unlikely your opponent's going to want to reveal your deck, but at the beginning of your turn, you can reveal the top card of your deck. Hope you get lucky with one of your reveal cards. If not, it don't make a difference, it's just good knowledge. The reason I say it's optional and not part of the deck is Treeforge Boardroom and Tanglewood Snag cost life points to activate, and if your opponent chooses to summon the Harmony Rare, you lose life points. And because we don't really attack directly until we're going for game, there's a good chance that we're going to spend majority of the game at less life points than our opponent, and that is the reason this is a choice card. But it's still a nice card to have as an option. But again, it's not at all mandatory, and the deck functions completely perfectly without it. But as you can see, pretty much every card in the deck is just there to fuel our Shardwood and StunCrux combo. Every card in the deck is aiming to help these two cards out, and then Sierras is just our win condition on top. If you wanted to take Sierras out, it does make a big difference, but the deck can play without it, because with the Shardwood StunCrux combo, you can just attack and freeze all your opponent's energy, and then swing Shardwood or whatever else you've got on the field into your opponent, because the frozen energy wouldn't be dealing damage. But it's a little bit slower, and it runs the risk of your opponent recycling and getting them creatures back on unfrozen energy. So Sierras is good just to keep in the pocket ready to directly attack. There is a card what could swap out, but I tested it this way, and I found this was the most optimal way to play it. And the card I'm talking about is Tanglewood Snag. It's Dragon Tree Folk, so it doesn't play into Sierras, allowing it to attack directly. So we use it purely for its reveal 1 per turn. What you could do is you could swap Tanglewood Snag for Planetary Crag, which I'll pop up on screen because I don't have the card handy. In Planetary Crag's effect is whenever one of your Shard Folks would be targeted by an ability or card effect, you can redirect that card to Planetary Crag instead. So for example, if we've got our Shardwood on field with our, we'll call this Planetary Crag, and your opponent tries to unsummon your Shardwood Amalgamation, you can use Planetary Crag to retarget it to Crag instead, so then Crag would go back to your hand and unsummon wouldn't touch Shardwood Amalgamation. So a Tanglewood Snag and Crag could be interchangeable, but after a lot of testing, I found that running the double Forerunner, the double Crystal Cove, and the double Treeforge Boardroom was more than enough to stop Reversion, Unsummon, or any card like that what affects your field. So Crag, it was a nice little deterrent for your opponent, but I never found myself using it all too often. So we went for Tanglewood Snag just to act as that 5th Crystal Cove really. So the deck is extremely fun to play, extremely annoying to be played against, and to my knowledge, once we add the optimal build, the deck hasn't lost a single game yet. It's very frustrating to play against because you attack your opponent, you freeze everything. Your opponent can't attack you because you freeze everything. And then when they do finally get the cards that start disrupting you, you've got Tanglewood Snag, double Crystal Cove, double Treeforge Boardroom, double Forerunner of the Eclipses. And it just it's so hard to beat this deck once it's established. It's definitely possible. I'd say the deck has one very strong hard counter, and that's Venergus, because Venergus can negate Shardwood Amalgamation. So it hard counters the deck, and until we have double Shardwood Amalgamation out. Now, the off chance your opponent has double Venergus, which you're probably not going to run into, but if it did, that's why we run the 1 copy of Future Phenomenon, because then your opponent can't negate all 3, meaning when we attack we can still freeze everything. And the other semi-counter card is Mechanical Hallucination. Not so much that it stops the deck, but it slows any deck that runs quite a few draw cards down, which we do. and which is another reason we run Glistening Undergrowth, because it gets over the fact that Mechanical Hallucination stops us from drawing. And the other biggest weakness of the deck, which I suppose every deck has the potential to hit, but I'd say this one hits it 5-10% of the time, and it's just drawing poorly. Like, I'll open a hand and I'll have that. That's a brilliant hand, but only once I've got StunCrux. There's very few brick possibilities, because if we open with Chains, we don't care. We open with Tanglewood, StunCrux, or anything like that, we're looking to get into them cards. It's just a few combinations where opening... Where is it? Opening any combination of these 5 cards without the other supporting cards can be a bit... It can slow you down for a turn. But unless your opponent can get 10 damage on board in one turn and win there and then, you can pretty much recover from it. But that's the only other issue I found. But I also cannot find a way to rectify that problem without adding more draw. And if I add more draw, I've got to take some of my versatile cards out. I've had a friend suggest dropping a Crystal Cove and a Treeforge Boardroom, or dropping Crystal Cove altogether with a Treeforge Boardroom and putting in 3 more draw cards and letting Forerunner do the work. I tested it like that, and I definitely got to my combo plays quicker, but the problem were I was only running 3 cards to stop my opponent from disrupting my board, which was double Forerunner and the other Treeforge Boardroom that were left. And I found that a lot of decks run more than 3 disruption cards, and we're usually trying to save the Forerunner for creature abilities, because Treeforge Boardroom and Crystal Cove doesn't work on them. So I only really had 1 Symmetry negate. But besides that, the deck runs incredibly well and is very powerful. And I think I've rambled on enough. So what I'm going to do soon is try and film a gameplay video using this deck, showing it in action. But until then, leave a like, drop a comment, tell me what you think, and thank you for watching.